Hey guys, this will be video 6 for the how to design build a custom Sparkle Flying V per 1950 specs. And this will be a continuation of the discussion about the necks or neck construction. And I got a ton of ground to cover, and I'm just going to dive right in and just go straight technical. The last state you saw the job in, I don't remember if I had that glued on yet. I don't think I did, but that's epoxy glued on. And then obviously, I know you saw it that way. That's just an indication mark. That's not a mistake. But you did not see any sort of the initial tenon rough out, and I'll discuss that in a little while. But one of the necks, I went ahead and before I did any of this stuff, I almost made a mistake. And it's funny how sometimes I'll do this. I'll get gung ho and I'll get excited, and I started this one. I went ahead, obviously, as you can see, I've got it basically finished. You could just about clean this one and clear coat it, and it would just about be finished. I'm exaggerating; it's not, but these outside lines are finished. So that's my headstock, and it is actually considerably different from the historical. The historical, I think mine is 3 3/4 or 3 1/2. Well, let me slow down and tell you, because I've covered these specs in past videos. No, it's 3 1/2. It's right at 3 1/2. And that what that does, that brings the E and the E in a little bit. Whereas I want to say the actual Flying V is like 4. It's enormous. It's really wide, and I think it's even a little bit longer. But I've built this enough to know that this one is just perfect once you get into your tuner configuration. And I'm just going to leave this on the counter, and then we'll talk about it in a little while. But nonetheless, if I just leave it up there, hopefully I won't forget. But I've built this enough to know that all of these locations are very much similar in relationship to how the 50s Les Paul feels. And so, on that note, the guitar should kind of maintain that 50s feel when you go to mine. The actual 58, 59 Carina Flying V, it's so darn wide right here that the E and the E get spread apart so far that the strings come off the nut and they're on a really extreme angle. It's fine as long as you're not running a Bigsby. But that was kind of as you know, we've discussed in the past, very experimental guitar, and they just didn't really take the time to engineer through some things like that. And they were going for, a lot of the shock and awe factor, I guess is what they used to call it. But they definitely shocked themselves when they realized they couldn't move them. So I think had they have done a little bit more engineering with this design, it probably would have been a little bit more better received. So anyway, but after I got that point, see, this was still square, and then I went ahead and routed off that taper, and I realized, whoa, slow down, because I need the S4S squareness of this line here and this line here as I'm doing my table saw work, because I cut my tenons on the table saw. I don't like using, templates like this, and then you put it up there and you tape it down, and then you run the router around it and all that stuff, because it's really fast. But I just don't like that because it's hard on your router. That's an enormous amount of material to take off with a router. And if we are all doing something like this, at a minimum, the reason we continued to work with wood is because we got really good with our grandpa's table saw or our dad's table saw. That's typically the first, like, really serious tool that you'll master as a woodworker, or at least get really comfortable with. Because once you get comfortable with the table saw, it's incredible what you can do, even not needing templates and things. Because if I'm building my own custom body here that hasn't even been routed out yet, sky's the limit, man. I can make that tenon whatever I want, length, width, thickness, height, you name it. So as long as I started out with a perfectly S4S board, and I'll show this one because it's so much bigger. As long as I've got this whole S4S thing going on here, and what S4S means is that means square four sides or surfaced four sides. Some people call it surfaced. It just means that it's surfaced here, surfaced there, all the way around. And on that note, when it is surfaced, it should have been surfaced by a machine that is very precise, so that this is perfectly 90 degrees. Most of you guys get that, but some of you guys might be watching this just for sheer entertainment, and that's okay. I'm cool with that. So when you hear me talk about S4S, it just means start with a very square board and watch it. Make sure it stays square and true. And as long as you, like if you were gluing these up and everything goes together, as long as you kept it nice and level on this constant surface here, then all that's going to force everything else to fall in place and remain very true. So therefore, once I got ready to start really machining this neck, I just cranked up the table saw, and well, it's a little bit more than that because I was engineering per a 1 1/2 inch tenon. So one way to do this would be come in, and I think I did it on one. Yeah, I started out, I drew a center line, and then I offset 3/4 and 3/4. And then I got to thinking, I thought, no, I don't have to do that because my neck is so precise and so perfect. Even when I was machining this truss channel, I was just working off the center from this edge here to this edge here. So why not take advantage of the fence on your table saw? And if this is 1 1/2 in the middle, your finished tenon, then make a mark. Make a mark out here, or down here, and then set your fence up so that your initial cut, when you run this cut, is a little bit fat. It's a little bit off target, and then flip your neck over and run this one. Now, I'd make this in one cut pass. I got the blade as high as it'll go. I think it's a 10-inch table saw, 10 and a half, 10, whatever a 10-inch table saw is. It may be 10 1/4. But you get the blade up all the way. Don't do step cutting. You'll end up, the blade will get hot and it'll start moving on you or something like that. So, I do you can see this one was the first pass because I like to work with my fence on the left side. And then, the blade is right here, and I'm going to stop here in a second. But just, we're all carpenters. We're all fairly good with our table saw. And in other words, to cut that tenon, just offset your fence, what would that be? Probably 1/2 inch. And from the outside here to that inside cut, and then just do a precise cut. And you should know basically where the table saw blade is on your saw. I've got on my table saw a magic marker, line, so that when everything's covered up and you don't know where that blade is down here on the bottom, you don't run the risk of cutting up in here. That's not nearly as bad as if you F up and let it cut up into here. And that was a clear coat, which it is a clear coat heel. Basically, that's very close to the finished heel you're going to see. That center right there, that's the finished neck. And when you're at this point, you've got to so protect these things. And, you're sitting there, you want to cut up close enough that you don't work yourself crazy with your pull saws, but basically you're just relieving the parts. And you might think, well, why didn't you go ahead and just rough it all out and get it out of the way? That way you could start really fitting it and make certain that everything's going to work out well. Because, and I'll go ahead and go to the finish line and answer that, although I might be getting off track a little bit and getting ahead of myself. But you want that flat surface there so that when you're, just imagine like this is like the router base, and that's like the little router hole in the middle. You want something for your router base because I profile my necks off the sides, and then I flip it over and I cut this side. Some guys route like this overhead with the neck on a taper, And that's fine, that's cool, but you have to stop about right here, and then you have to hand shape the whole heel. The way I've designed my construction, by the way I've approached my order of operations, I'm looking at this thing from a standpoint of how can I build this neck within 45 operations rather than 54, or 37 rather than 70, or something like that. I'm just grabbing numbers out of the air. And I found that by uh, running this bit like this, I can turn that curve and come right off and basically just about have the heel finished as well. And it's amazing. That's what I meant by they'll come together rocket fast. Okay, so I definitely got a little bit too general there and jumped the gun, but that's okay because I might forget to talk about it later on. And in other words, what I'm saying, I like to leave those surfaces up there because that's plenty strong enough. I'm not going to press on it because it could snap. I don't want to break it loose, but it's plenty strong enough to allow for the router base to have something to ride on. Because I even come in here, I'll use this as an example, but I temporarily glue a block like this, and what that allows, if you don't put that block on there, you're sitting here free-handing a 1-inch radius router bit at, I don't know, what do they run, 17,000 RPMs, 20,000 RPMs if you slow them down? I think 17. You're free-handing this, and the last thing you want to do is hope that you don't let that corner round over, okay? Because it'd be game over. Now that got a little bit of a tear out right there, but it's okay because it will get rounded over. But had that have torn out all the way back to here, I would have been doing some repair work, fitting that part in, and I can't remember how how it got torn out, but probably when I was roughing it out. But if that had have torn out when I was roughing out, I would have stopped operations and I would have tight bind glued that back into place because I would have known that in the future I would have needed that exact piece for color, grain, you name it. And sometimes you got to stop and make repairs, but keep your eye on what you're doing and always be envisioning the neck that's going to come alive as you pull the trigger on the router, and and go from there. So I probably never will show that operation on camera just because I don't want the liability, because the way my jig is, it makes it look really, really easy, but that's insanely dangerous. And, it just sometimes that's the price we pay for doing high quality woodwork. So, but anyway, like I said, I almost made a mistake because I relieved that almost too soon, and then I slowed down. But the cool thing about it was because I had machined this neck, both of these basically the exact finish dimension right here to fit this body. Because this body, as I had mentioned, I had to go ahead and build it finished so that when I get ready to glue my neck up, that's going to be mahogany. If you look at my last video series, the neck is not going to be painted black. It's going to be Honduran mahogany, and it's got to be flush and beautiful, but it's also got to show my ability as a luthier that, wow, we've never seen anybody like major manufacturer do that. Typically, well, they don't have time. It's not that they couldn't do it, but typically they're going to paint that neck the same color as the body, or either the body's going to be mahogany and they're just going to be shooting coats of clear. So once I determined that 2 3/16 of an inch, I had to make certain that I went ahead and just machined these exactly 2 3/16 of an inch. So that's my finished guitar, and I got to protect that like a hawk. I got to be really careful. Not even, and even that's got a little scratch out there, I got to be careful because, just because. Is this one clear? Yeah, this one is definitely clear coated. And what's going to be beautiful, if you can, I don't know if you can see that. This being a thinner body, This neck is so perfectly quarter sewn that even when it comes down into the heel, it's beginning to round down just a little bit, but this is going to be an insanely beautiful neck, and can't wait to see it come together. So, and the heel, oh yeah, this is good. I'm glad I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here because I used to make a list of things I wanted to talk about, but it's just so boring. It was better. I found that it was better for me to just go off the top of my head. Typically, I like to start out very close to 3/4 of an inch maximum. That's plenty. When I'm talking about from where that's where it's going to join the body, okay, and from and it'll step down. We'll talk about the steps some other time, but well, either if it doesn't matter if it was flush with the bottom or if the neck was a little bit thinner, a la the Les Paul. I need to show this because some people might not know what I'm talking about. Okay, on my 59 replica here, you can see that's basically started out 3/4, and then by the time I did my finished shape work, it ended up being 11/16. Okay, really beautiful, and that's what I meant when I talk about the step. It actually steps up higher than I would prefer, but that's just traditional. And I wanted this one to be very, very close to traditional, so I went ahead and stepped it up. It's probably close to 1/4, but typically I like to step them about 3/16 of an inch. There is a possibility in order to protect the industry, I probably will end up coming in and epoxying a ebony cap on there that is about or about 1/8 of an inch thick, and actually have a jewelry shop or some sort of CNC machine shop actually engrave my name and the date or something like that, because this is a pretty high end guitar, but that would protect the industry. And in the event someone came in and put a Gibson logo on this thing, and because these guys that are doing that top stuff, they're getting really, really good at the relic work. And that's why I like using the double adjustable truss rod, and introducing little things like that right there. And you'd have to be really out of the loop to get taken advantage of by someone in the future, claiming that that guitar was an authentic vintage guitar. But if it had a single adjustable truss rod, and I didn't do anything with that cap, somebody could probably get taken advantage of. I don't do that, and none of the people that I build for uh, are that way, because I kind of qualify my clients on the front end, and I can kind of tell if someone's less than what's the word, less than respectable. So, and fortunately, I haven't run into that, but there is a lot of that knockoff stuff going on out there, and we have to protect the industry. So back to rockabilly and back to building neck. If you do little things like that, you can protect the industry. And for the most part, the way I build my guitars, it's obvious these are not made by Gibson. I mean, it's just so crystal clear. They might have a strong resemblance to some point, but for the most part, anybody could tell they're not authentic. And to me, that's a good thing. And I'm going to be a little bit arrogant and say, quite frankly, I feel like my Flying V design is an improvement because I did do a lot of engineering in this guitar where I actually connect the neck at the body at the 18th fret. So I moved everything in ever so slightly. Guys that are used to playing, because the traditional Flying V is a headstock diving, you know what? It's just real hard to keep under control. Another reason why I wanted to go with a little bit scaled down headstock profile, yet it's still, got some sex appeal there. And beautiful. I'll go ahead and put this tuner on. But it's just beautiful with the vintage layout. And you can see even like this distance down here between the edge of the tuner and the edge of the guitar, very, very traditional. Now, things like that, I've tried to get really close to historically accurate. So once these go in, and the cool thing about my design, I'm still keeping there's still wood in there. It's pretty close. It's probably about 3/16 of an inch between each one, and I think the authentic V might be a little bit wider up there. But if you go just a little bit wider here, it gets exponentially longer unless you get much fatter on your uh, diameter of that circle on the end. And I like this little bit of a sharp point to it. To me, that looks very authentic. Okay, so looks great. The tuners are beautiful, or you could go with anything. Sky's the limit. And I haven't machined the top yet, but these will be press and bushing. Whoop. These will be the press and bushing. I'll just show them. I can't get a grip on it. Vintage, correct. Looks really nice. Be careful going with like the Spurzell. They have the enormous washer. I like the Spurzell for a lot of things, but I don't like using the Spurzell on like the vintage replicas or whatever these things are called, complimentary guitars. I just love the press in. They look really nice. Okay, look very vintage, and it keeps a lot of real estate showing because this is a small surface here. And if you get way too, that's what I hate about the Les Paul Customs. Even from Gibson, they came in with these enormous washers on them, so much so that it actually almost encroached on the diamond, the split diamond inlay. I mean, they were cutting it really close. So, all right. So what did I miss? So the order of operations would have been just like this, like the neck. Even before you did this shape work up here, like the really attractive finish top, you could have gone ahead and done this. That doesn't affect either side, but before it's over, you would not have wanted to have tapered the neck and then try to go to your table saw and cut this. You probably would have gotten yourself in trouble because when I was machining this one right here, I was having to it's only flat from here down. So I was having to make certain that I kept perfect contact with that right there, and I had a gap back here. So I knew what I was doing and just to keep an eye on it, but that was unnecessary. Why? Because I made a mistake. I jumped the gun, and that would have run the risk of me losing control of building out this part right here. And then once I do, and what will be now I'll be able to taper this. I'll just go ahead and go through the operations here. Okay, so let's say this was the operation where we went ahead, did the headstock, went ahead and finished it. That's cool. You could have gone ahead and even installed the tuners just to get a feel for everything, drill the holes and then take them apart and put them back in the box. That way you're through doing machine work. So once you do all your paint work, you don't run the risk of scratching something later on. So nothing wrong with that. And then the next operation would have been then come down and do all this heel tuning work. And if you weren't, since you're not going to drop these off yet, go ahead and clip these so that you can fit it to the body and determine how close you are. And I realized, well, perfect. So that's exactly what I want. So, and then after that operation, then you can taper both of them. And once you have this taper right here, and when I say tapered, this is a little bit dangerous, and I'm not sure I would recommend this for. Let me back up. I would certainly not recommend this for the beginner, but I went ahead and went straight to the finish line. I'm just ever so slightly over 1 11/16. So that's my finished guitar right there. I got to protect that like a hawk. But I love that because once I draw a pencil line from that point there up to this point here, which is already clarified is the finished neck, I know for a fact that's my guitar. And that's exactly where, let's see, where would it hit the 18th? That's exactly, this fretboard is a little bit more narrow. Well, this will give you an idea of what the 1980s Gibson fretboard would be compared to mine. See, mine's just a little bit wider. We'll say a 32nd of an inch maybe. But when someone picks my guitar up and plays it, the first thing they're going to think is, oh man, yeah, it feels just like a Gibson. It doesn't feel like a Gretsch, or it doesn't feel like a Fender, it doesn't feel like a classical guitar. It actually, if it's going to look similar to it, it needs to feel similar to it as well, unless your client requested something totally different, and then that's a different story for a different song. So anyway, and there's a part of me that I really love the idea of trying to repurpose this mother of pearl, because this came from a Tim Shaw era 1980s uh, Gibson Les Paul custom that I restored about a year ago for a guy up in Ohio that's been become a really cool text friend. He's a super guy. So Rick, if you're chiming in every now and then, I appreciate you dropping by, and we'd love to hear a video of the Les Paul as well. So if you get a chance. And I talked to Sam last night, the guy out in Arizona that bought the Sparkle. Had a really long conversation with Sam, and he got the pups in his guitar, and he went with I think he went with the Dave Mustaine, which was so cool because that's the Seymour Duncan custom pickups, which was exactly kind of what I was hoping he would go with, because I always run the 59 in the neck and the JB in the bridge. But the Dave Mustaine, apparently, they beefed up, and there's a little bit more bottom end in the bridge pickup. So that will be positively perfect for his guitar, because it's got that real throaty, growling antique pine rather than like a real deep, muddy mahogany, or I shouldn't say muddy, just, deep and warm. So he seemed to be really happy with it, and I got some lemon oil on the table. If I can remember, if you're sticking around, Sam, I'll kind of show you what I was talking about just doing the French polishing. You don't have to do any electric buffing or anything. But I don't think I digress too much, other than to let you know that once you get to this point, now you can go ahead and taper it, put it in your jig, and then I'm not kidding you, within 45 minutes to 30 minutes, you've got a neck that is very lower, that is very close to finished. And don't go all the way to the finish line. And that's what I was talking about. Maybe hold yours about a 16th of an inch wider on each side, but don't go too wide, because whatever you machine off, uh, I would say only go about a 32nd of an inch wide. Let's say you were going to build a 1 3/4 inch nut, then make it just 1/16 of an inch wider total. What's that? 1 13/16? Is that right? Yeah, 1 13/16. I don't know the metric. In other words, a 32nd over here and a 32nd over there. Because when you come in here and you do this precision machine work, and you're watching this line right here, once you get it perfect, if you got it perfect, but you were an eighth of an inch too wide here and an eighth of an inch too wide here, well, by the time you fit your fretboard, which is 1 3/4 of an inch thick down here, well, man, you got an eighth of an inch material to take off. Now you're going to work your what off by hand, and I'll just about bet you that router bit you're going to f up, because now you're relying on what's in front of you, and that's a lot of work to do that by hand. If that's maple, you're going to wear yourself out. The mahogany's pretty submissive under a hard 120 and a maple block, but just try to trust yourself to just, go ahead and get real close to your finish line here, and then just watch. That's so important, especially if you're doing a stain grade. You got to watch that like a hawk, because if you screw it up, just just bite the bullet and realize, all right, we're going paint grade, because I've done it before, and I tried to come in and do lamination and build it up and deceive the eye with tints and stains and crap like that, and just it doesn't work. So not to be negative, just telling war stories here. And all right, let me check the time. 28 minutes. Wow, man. I don't know where that time went, but it did go fast. I don't think I rambled, though. I really think it's just, this is an enormous amount of information. Uh, and I think basically that's what it boiled down to. I might have digressed a little bit. If I did, I apologize. But as I say, I think it was for a worthy cause. So, and the next thing that would happen would, that'll be routed and round. And then you'll have this square edge right here that you want. That's when you'll come in and start shaping and blending. And you got to make really certain that once you're coming up here with your router, fortunately, by going ahead and gluing the ears on it, the base of the router, I should have removed the base, but just imagine this is the base of the router. It's going to come up and it's going to bump, and that's going to save you from going too far. Because and I've never done it, but I can't even begin to imagine. Also, how dangerous it would be if you're buzzing along and this thing is turning clockwise, and if it came down here and you weren't paying attention, it caught that. It could pull the neck really bad, and it could pull your router tool into the neck and tear that baby apart. If it didn't hurt you, it's going to scare the devil out of you. And so just there's nothing wrong with training wheels and maybe coming up here and gluing little blocks in temporarily or clamping them. Just whatever you need to do to be safe, because uh, just keep a tally of how many hours you've got logged in your job to get to that right there. And it's not going to be a 2-day process. It's going to be it'll probably be 2 weeks. Probably when I was really beginning to build guitars, I think it took me like 3 weeks to build a neck, working on it 2 or 3 hours each night after I got back from the office. And it was cool because it's a great way to kind of wind down if you have a high stress job. And I think that's why a lot of us would work as well, because it gets our mind on something different. But it happens very fast. You'll go from this basically wheelbarrow handle to a Honduran mahogany neck within just about 5 to 7 operations. And I don't think there's really anything else to talk about other than I'll just keep it light, and I'll talk briefly about what I had mentioned to Sam about, because he had asked me about when should I buff the guitar. And I just said, well, if you're going to have it machine buffed, just wait a while, because if you got someone who doesn't know that this finish was only applied a month ago, they might get a little bit aggressive and they might burn this up. And a lot of times, as I told him, a lot of times what I would do is just come in here with a little bit of, I got to keep that lemon oil very far away from that over there. But just 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 enjoy your craftsmanship, and just come in here and start rubbing it by hand. And what'll happen, I would keep it down here and I'd start pressing. And I don't like using the rag because I want all of the oil to really stay on the guitar, and just really start putting your weight into it, and you'll feel your hand heat up. And just within a matter of 15 minutes, you'll have this beautiful low luster glow. And took you about 20 minutes, man, and you got a beautiful guitar. Now, that right there is definitely going to, darken back. I mean, it's going to flatten back out fairly quickly. But the more you rub this, and when you're doing French polishing, you put the shellac on and then you scrape it with a flat razor blade. It's almost like you scrape off 70% and then you're polishing with a cloth. And then I think you might be using turpentine, because I only did it once. It was very, very painstaking process, but very therapeutic, and very much brings you back to the artistry of what the violin builders were doing, their approach. But I just kind of applied it to, just this right here. And you could work it with a diaper, probably, like a real soft cotton cloth. But as I mentioned to Sam last night, or no, I mentioned in the video, I like leaving these little divots and these imperfections in there. I don't know if you're seeing that, but that shows that it's an antique wood. I'm going to leave that clear as well, so that it will identify that it's an antique wood. Okay. So I hope that was a good video, and I hope I didn't waste anybody's time. But there's a lot to building next, and quite frankly, I really didn't get into any of the design ideas, but I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's kind of your target right there. You just want your tenon to be up in there, and that gives a break point for your neck to come in. This is for a Les Paul. But in other words, I don't need to show you that this goes in the guitar body. Well, I think I think everyone watching this would know that. And you're either looking at it from the side profile or you're looking at it from the top or the bottom, however you want to consider the view. Okay. That's what I was talking about. Just go ahead and go straight to the finish line on your finished dimensions, because Stuart McDonald did. That's their finished guitar. The nut and that would be the 16th fret on the Les Paul. Okay, so there you have it. All right, I'll look at the table here and think about. I'll hit this very briefly. I'm about to glue, once that neck is finished, I'm going to temporarily glue this down, and I'm going to use the actual headstock as a routing guide, and I'm going to route this acrylic. That's a I think that's 3/8 inch acrylic, and that will be my headstock profile for all of my future flying Vs. Okay. So once you get to the point where you're really happy with the guitar that you've designed, then you can make your acrylic templates, and then when I get ready to, that was what I needed to bring up. I hope it's still recording. Rather than coming in here with a pencil and finding the center and finding the top, finding the bottom, then all I'll have to do, you may see a pencil mark on there. I will take just the way Stuart McDonald did on here. They have a scored line, center line. Then I will score a center line on my acrylic, and then I'll be able to put it down, and that's where I will jet glue it down with masking tape. And then once that's in place, then I'll take my router and I'll just route that stuff off. Well, yeah, I will take my bandsaw and just rough it off, but I'm not having to use a pencil once, other than to find the center. I find the center line from here to here, and then I use that score line, jet glue that down. If you miss it, take it off, start over, because wherever it lands, that's the headstock you're going to end up with. And whether this is doesn't matter, any guitar you're building, you can do this approach. Okay, I don't like the idea of trying to do the whole template. To me, that's too much at once. I like doing like the headstock templates. And why so long? Well, it gives a little bit of room for the router base. Like when I'm coming up here, I'm not falling off, and I'm also not risking getting into my neck with my bits. Okay, and then the cool thing is, then I can put it up on the drill press and put my Forstner bit through the holes in the top. Just imagine that's the acrylic. Then I just put this up on my drill press table, and then fit my Forstner bit down in there. And then usually what I do, I go ahead and just push the Forstner bit down in there, and then I clamp it, and then I make sure that I'm able to open and close the throat. And then rather than pulling the trigger and going into the acrylic, I go ahead and put the Forstner bit down in the acrylic, and I'm already kissing the wood. Then I pull the trigger, and then I start cutting through. You got a block on the back, because odds are, once you clamp, there might be some movement, and a lot of times I don't clamp, because I want to have the freedom of just having a good grip on it. Bring that baby down with a Forstner bit, and then fit it into place, and then either pull the trigger with my nose, or however, then I go straight through. I'm gonna stop talking about that, because those are things that if you're at this point, you've already got your order of operations and how you do those things. So, I'm just going to flip that. Well, I'm just going to leave it that way, and I'm just going to stop talking. That's what I'm going to do. I appreciate you guys stopping in. The next video these necks will be very close to being ready to be glued in, and that will probably be the next video. We'll be gluing these necks in. So I appreciate you guys dropping in, and I'll see you the next time.